Hey, Bernie, good morning.
Hey Dick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, but I'm pissed off. And I got to talk about it, and I'm not sure where I'm going. But I had another call from one of our classmates, the ultra conservative individual. And, he started off with, "Did you get vaccinated?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm not getting vaccinated because it's a government plot. But more than that, do you realize 10,000 women have had miscarriages after having a vaccine?" And I said, "Oh, where'd you come up with that?" "Well, it's a blog I follow." And I go, "Do you ever check the validity of these things?" It's one of the biggest conspiracy theories on the planet right now. And if you go and address pregnant women and the vaccine and everything else, you have a whole plethora of different sites you can look at that say this is the biggest bullshit thing that's ever hit. And I'm going, how can somebody as smart as this go through life believing all these conspiracies? And then I went back to my psychology background, and basically what you got is you got people, many of whom feel disenfranchised, but you've got people who buy into blogs that support their basic gut feelings. So say, for example, I don't like vaccines. I will look for everything possible that says they're going to kill people and make pregnant women have miscarriages. Totally false. You know, I've talked to I don't know how many people who say, well, I'm not going to have the vaccine because blah, 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 blah. And some of these things are so out of space, you think they learned it from an alien. What is wrong?
Well, first of all, maybe this individual had their plethora surgically removed.
Okay, we got you to smile.
Now I'll be serious. I think an adult has the right to either be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. I think that's an individual choice.
I agree.
And well, thank you. And I think you don't need to look up blogs to make that decision. It's based on your own, your health, your age, and your susceptibility to the coronavirus. So in my case, check all those boxes. I got vaccinated and I didn't have to think long and hard on it. That being said, it's not FDA approved. It was rushed and it was called, Trump hailed it as, being developed at warp speed. And I think he undoubtedly saved a lot of lives in doing it. But the problem I have, and I don't know if this mirrors what the individual you've been talking about is saying, but the problem I have is now Biden is deciding that they're going to send out the feds going door to door with their vaccination kits and vaccinating people. And if somebody refuses, then they're going to keep some type of database on American citizens as to whether they've been vaccinated or not. And to me, if they're willing to do that, what comes next in terms of big government, big brother monitoring our every move?
Well,
Now,
hold it.
okay.
I've been trying to get to Canada now for 2 years, and their borders are closed, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got the Hawaii Safe Travel Program, where you're in this database and you can come to Hawaii. If you're not in the database, you got to go into quarantine. You can't come, or we're going to put you on a plane and send you back. And I've looked at this, and the alternative, first of all, creating the database is a nightmare because none of them are compatible. But without a database and people paying $600 for a forged vaccination card, how the hell do we control it? That's issue number one. But getting back to what you said about seniors, no, you said adults being able to make a choice. I have no problem with that. But the choice has to be informed based on critical thinking. This bullshit about pregnant women and heart problems and everything else, which have been studied worldwide. So I guess you could say not only does everybody in the United States lie, but everybody worldwide lies. And you know, that again, excuse my French, is bullshit.
Okay. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I will challenge you in this regard. Did you have a similar indignation, Dick, when the federal government was fanning the flames, and particularly through Fauci and Blix, with regard to how many deaths they felt there would be due to the coronavirus, which we know now were definitely overinflated, and the media fanned those flames. So I would just argue, and it's kind of a parallel to what you're talking about, and I don't disagree with you. But forgive me, Tito wants in on yes.
Well, we agree with everything, but we were talking earlier offline about what's happening in Los Angeles, and it just hit me of what's happening in Japan. You know, they opened up, they said everything was great, and now they've got, you know, deaths and infections and you know, everything else. And yeah, they predicted it was going to be this and that and everything else, but that's not the prediction that came true.
You know, if you want to control a population, nothing spreads fear more than a pandemic. And you can talk about variants till the cows come home. Most people aren't educated enough to understand the science of epidemiology. I sure don't. But let's go back to your comment with regard to Los Angeles County. My question is, they've reimposed masks to be worn even indoors for everybody. And if masks are work that well, if they're that efficacious in screening out the coronavirus, then why do we need a vaccination? And conversely, if we've chosen to be vaccinated and the government wants everybody vaccinated right down to 3-year-olds, which I think is ludicrous, then why do we need masks? I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but something seems like quite a contradiction in terms here.
Well, I would agree, but when I look at Los Angeles and look at Japan, I almost characterize it as a knee-jerk reaction. You know, we screwed up, we didn't follow through with the original plan, and now here we go again. And it is a here we go again.
Well, there's something to me sinister about the Fed showing up on your doorstep with syringes.
Okay, hold it, but let's forget that, because that could turn into a conspiracy theory, and I like to stay out of those things. But let's go back to what we went through starting in 1952 with the polio epidemic. They literally grabbed people up, formed a line, and everybody in school and elsewhere got shot. And if that wasn't good enough, you know, then Sabin came out with the sugar cube, because there was the big debate on, you know, it was a new technology, don't get shots, don't do this, don't do that. So what they do, they shot up both of us. I'm sure you got shot up, and I'm sure you had a sugar cube.
Yeah, my parents opted to have me get the polio vaccination.
Okay. But why did your parents make that decision? On what data did
Well,
they
I don't
come up with that?
I don't know. That was so long ago. I don't
Well-
know how they arrived at that. I honestly don't. I'm not being
Okay.
coy.
Okay, then your parents did not take part in jaywalking with Jay Leno. You know, where people, stupid people do stupid does.
Yeah.
No, but there is a major difference between your parents' attitude then and the attitude that's floating around now. I don't think your parents were on jaywalking, number one, but I think they were smart enough to figure out alternatives and what works and what doesn't. Because remember, Salk was being attacked using a new technology, which is happening again today. And yet, with that going on, your parents made obviously an informed decision, I would think. I don't think they flipped a coin and said, are we going to give Bernie a shot?
Well, I believe that there are a lot of parents concerned today where schools have reopened or are about to reopen, and that in itself is a topic, that schools have been closed for over a year, but governors and mayors are sending their kids to private schools, and their children are unaffected by the comprehensive restrictions. But there are a lot of parents that feel they don't want little Susie or little Johnny sitting in a classroom all day wearing a mask for any number of reasons.
Well,
And yet that's being imposed. And the other thing is the likelihood of a youngster, and let's call a youngster for argument's sake, under 18, okay? Just for purposes of this discussion. Statistics have shown, medical statistics have shown that the likelihood of contracting COVID and dying from it in that age group is next to nil. So why is the government, and particularly Dr. Fauci, so adamant about getting school children stuck with the needle? And I just read a story that a young woman trying to get into college who has a medical condition that even her doctor has said it would probably be imprudent to get the COVID shot given your medical condition, has been rejected by a college of her choice, because that college is requiring that all entering students be vaccinated.
Well, I think part of the problem is lack of knowledge. I mean, we're on the new frontier. We're using a procedure like Salk that is not in line with the way everything goes, number one. But number two, if these studies continue, which they are, they might, I was telling my doctor, and I normally won't discuss this, but I will. I said, well, look, if the COVID attacks everything, cancer is stronger and attacks even more. Gee whiz, the cancer might kill the COVID. Well, now they're working on technologies like that, where the same RNA sequencing might, in fact, become a cure for cancer. But they don't know. Just like they didn't know when Jonas Salk did his max vaccines, they didn't know when Sabin came on scene, his arch enemy, so to speak. And yet, within about 2 years, we basically eliminated polio.
I hear you, but I'll play devil's advocate.
That's what I love.
And I'll hearken back to Obama's shovel-ready stimulus bill, a huge boondoggle that ultimately trillions went to the banks instead of into construction jobs. But,
Yeah, well, you know what he was shoveling.
Yeah. Very good, Dave. But that was the bill that Nancy Pelosi said we need to pass it so we can find out what's in it. And that was such an outrageous statement. And to some extent, I think that same kind of goofy thinking is going on in Washington. We got to get everybody vaccinated to find out what's in the vaccine. In other words, to find out what the side effects are and if more or fewer people die from it. Now, I'm making a bit of an extreme statement to make a point. But again, I had no problem. I think I made an informed decision. I talked to my medical team. And by the way, folks watching this podcast, I need a medical team. And
it's bigger than mine.
yeah. So, I decided, hey, it's prudent. And that to me is what you're talking about, an informed decision. But conversely, if I'm a 22-year-old in my senior year of college and healthy as can be, and the college and the federal government that, sends money to that college to exercise leverage is saying, nope, this young man must get vaccinated or out of college he goes. I think that's preposterous and that's government overreach. Now, that's my view. And I guess right now I'm kind of sticking to it.
Well, does that mean that you watch blogs that support your point of view?
To some extent, but I don't call them blogs. I mean, I look at .com sites that are typically news sites or news gathering sites that I've come to trust. I've culled out a lot of sites over the years, and the ones I use right now, I have a lot of faith in, but typically I look for a second or third source before I post on Facebook. And really 99% of what I do on Facebook, as you know, Dick, is political stuff and from a conservative point of view. But I'm aware of what I would call the radical right-wing sites, and I don't go to those.
Well,
but conversely, look at the New York Times, supposedly the most revered newspaper, not only in America, but some would regard around the world, and that newspaper is patently biased. So I think you have to be a careful, objective, critical thinker, as you've argued. And I have no disagreement with you on that. And I think there is a tendency in people, they come up with some, half-cocked idea or concept or concern or hysterical whatever, and they go hunting for something that supports it. I agree with you on that.
Well, my point would have been, what do we do about it? You've already answered that question, and that's critical thinking. How do we get the jaywalkers to understand that they need to learn some of these things? Because these people are idiots.
Well, this is a bit of a segue, Dick, but I just posted something this week, and it's a relatively new survey. It's on YouTube of young people at our nation's capital. And the way the questions were posed was, if you've noticed the protesters in Cuba who are out in the streets protesting the communist regime there, and the consequences of that are waving American flags. And they asked these young people, what do you think about the American flag? What kind of symbol is it to you? And as one might expect, probably 8 out of 10. I mean, the vast majority had something pejorative to say about the American flag. You know, we're a racist.
Hold it. You were using big words again.
Oh,
Now,
they
you
had
say,
something nasty to say.
pejorative is nasty. Okay. Hey, you told me you wanted to smile.
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Okay.
How much time do we have left?
Excuse me?
How much time do we have left? You guys keep the clock and
I'm keeping the clock right now. We've got 8 minutes.
oh, are we done on this topic? Can I swing to
Well,
something a little more lighthearted, or do you want to
Sure.
stay?
no, sure.
Okay. Um, I just read that Sunday is National Ice Cream Day.
All right.
And, you like to reminisce about the old days when we were young kids in our 50s. So in light of it being National Ice Cream Day, what came to mind for me, and then we'll compare notes, is in my day, they had these little hand push ice cream trucks, and the
Yes.
ice cream was packed in dry ice. And on the handlebar, they had bells. So you'd kind of push the cart with the meat or palm of your hand, and then they'd work their fingers. I don't know if people can see like this, and it'd ring the bells. And boy, when you heard the bells coming down the street, you'd go try to find your mom and get her to give you enough money to get an ice cream.
You
And
know,
then later on, that transitioned to the Good Humor Man.
yes, and that's sick music. But you just triggered a thought, and I was talking to the grandkids about it. In fact, I talked to my daughter about it. She didn't believe it. You had a little box and a little door that opened next to your back door, and they put in milk with bottles sealed with what I guess became Pogs. And the cream was at the top. So, you pour it off, separate it, and put that away. That was neat. I don't think anybody today has a clue what a milk bottle was.
Well,
But the Good Humor Man. Loved the Good Humor Man, aside from the music. Even then, I thought it sucked.
when you talk about the old-fashioned milk bottle, I think of James Dean drinking out of it, and I thought that was so cool, and I knew I couldn't get away with that in our home.
Yeah, but do you realize, and we really need to realize this at our age, that was 75 years ago.
I know. Now, I've never told you this, Dick, but I rode an ice cream truck and got hurt. And I kept having gotten hurt from my parents. But I was in middle school, we called it junior high, and some kids hopped on the running board on either side of the ice cream truck. And they were calling me, I'll say CS. I think everybody knows what that is. And so finally, I, bent to peer group pressure, and I jumped on the damn truck, and I had no handles. They were all taken. So I kind of put my fingers on the top of the roof where you have that little beveled edge, to keep water from pouring off, I guess. Anyways, the woman, because it wasn't a Good Humor Man, it was a Good Humor woman, looked in her rearview mirror, saw the kids on her truck and gunned it, and then made a hard left turn, and I went flying. And I'll never forget that, because she didn't care. We were all sprawled out everywhere on the pavement, and it's not like she stopped and gave everybody an ice cream cone if they didn't go home and spilled the goods. But I was mom. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Well, the other memory that comes to mind aside from that, and I've done the same thing, hanging on to the good humor. I think those are called rain gutters or something, but
Yeah, okay.
they're only about itsy bitsy and it doesn't work. But that reminds me of the other thing, and that is playing baseball in the street. And then we used to yell, car, and we'd all get off, the car would go through, and then we'd go back and continue our game. I haven't seen that in 75 years. I mean, what happened?
I don't know. Kids are inside looking at screens. That's all I can say. By the way, what's your favorite ice cream?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Then, and now. Has it changed?
I've had the same favorite. Well, my favorite is vanilla, but it's got to be made with real vanilla beans. And there's a place in Duluth, Minnesota. I used to know the family. They had the ice cream business. Anyways, vanilla is the way to go. But when I was a kid, we used to go visit my uncle in Superior. And on the way back, we'd stop at Dairy Queen. And my brother and parents would get a Dairy Queen ice cream cone. I don't like cones, never have really. So I would get the cup version. And it just hit me. It was 10 cents. And I don't know what the flavor was then, but my favorite was the Dairy Queen. I guess now it's self or soft serve or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you can't go wrong with vanilla.
Now,
when I was a kid, I liked the ice cream bars that were orange on the outside and vanilla on the inside.
Oh, Dream Bars.
Dream bars. Those were my favorite.
Well, now that I've gotten older, after living in Europe for 17 years, I've really developed a love for espresso ice cream, Italian soft serve, any of the fruit ones, strawberries, whatever.
Yeah. I'm just kind of a plain guy. Vanilla. I love vanilla.
Well, we
can't have it, by the way. My doctors would give me 30 lashes, but one time I created havoc in the family when I was a little boy. My sister delighted in licking her ice cream slower than the rest of us, so that she still had an ice cream when we were all done with ours. And this particular trip, when we stopped for ice cream, she ordered a sugar cone that's pointed at the bottom. So I begged her to let me have just one lick. And she finally reluctantly gave in, handed me the cone, and I quickly bit off the bottom and sucked the ice cream out through the bottom. One of the nastiest things I ever did to my sister.
Well, Dream Bars were high class. If you couldn't afford a Dream Bar, the other one was a popsicle. Where you had two things, you broke it in half. I don't know what happened to popsicles. They disappeared. Just like our time has disappeared.
No heavens. Okay. Well, I hope we solved world hunger today.
Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out next week based on feedback.
Time to go have a bowl of ice cream.
Okay.